Welcome back, Shop Rats. Today, we're going to talk about perfection versus production. Let's watch the show intro. We'll see you in just a couple seconds. After all, this is Talk About It Tuesday, and I'm Mike. And this is
My Cars Shop.
I have several programs that I enjoy watching from time to time on more traditional broadcasting platforms outside of this one. And lately, as I've been going back and watching some of those series from the beginning, I've been paying a little bit more attention to how they're doing the work that they show, which a lot of times is not much, and I'm starting to understand why. But it's been interesting to me to see some of these big name shops, and they don't focus on the work like we do here at the shop, but by the same token, they do show some things, and I've observed some interesting things I thought was worth spending a few minutes talking about for a Talk About It Tuesday. One of the more recent ones that I watched, they were putting a quarter panel extension onto a 50s vintage hot rod, and I couldn't help but notice the welds that were on the bottom. The quarter panel was just a bottom quarter panel extension, and I couldn't help but notice how much their welds looked a lot like mine. And it was not perfectly flush ground and flush welded, and it wasn't butt welded, it was lap welded, and on and on and on. And I just chuckled to myself, and I said, yeah, time is money to these people, and they're turning out a great quality product, but they're not going to take the time to carriage build this thing. They're just going to get it done.
Get it done.
I think that's an important key to understanding some of the inside dope.
Just call me the inside dope
Of the industry, and particularly in the hot rod world, especially when you're building custom cars. It's not wrong to not be a perfectionist in the way you're doing things. I've been around body shops and I've worked on real high dollar cars, as you've heard me say before. And of course, the way we would do things is definitely to the best of our ability and so forth. Hang panels in such a way that they are undetectable when you're dealing with things, for example, like a $250,000 AAR CUDA that I worked on many years ago. But that's a much different thing than stitches. And again, I've said all of this before, but it was just fresh on my mind because of watching these national builders building these higher dollar cars. And when I say higher dollar, I'm meaning like $25,000 up to, well, some of them would go for over $100,000 and did, and they turn out some amazing work. So I'm not wanting to sound like I'm being critical, but rather I just want you to have perspective. If you watch some of these shows, and I'm not going to name any names, so just relax on that one. But if you pay close attention to when you seeing them modifying a panel, or you see them attaching a panel and grinding welds and so forth, they don't show a lot of that, and I can understand why, because a lot of people's heads explode because they do not understand what it's like to work in a production environment where time is money. I'm not making an excuse for shoddy work. What I am saying is maybe you can relax a little bit in what you're doing. If it's not perfect, so what? Even the professionals don't make it perfect. We always used to say in the body shop that Bondo and paint will make us what we ain't.
Bondo and paint will make us what we ain't.
And there was never an excuse to put, 3 inches of Bondo on a panel or anything like that. Obviously, the goal is very thin stuff, and you want to get your metal work good and not have lots of waves in there and so forth. But there's no time. The customer's not going to pay for you to do a perfectly flush welded panel, even in a cut and butt. That's great stuff, and I love doing that, and I do that work. But there's times where I'm like, I don't have that time. I'm going to get this done, and I'm going to lap weld and lap this panel in and plug weld it, and we're going to be done with it, and we're going to move on. The biggest thing is, as long as the finish coats don't crack. I've probably shared this story before, and if I have, I apologize, but I'm getting old, and I can't remember what I've said, plus I crank out a lot of content, and the lines on what I've shared and what I haven't can get a little blurry sometimes. It's part of being, older and being a bit senile.
Senile.
I remember when I was working in a hot rod shop many years ago, and we were doing a Mercedes, and I was doing some front fender patches because you couldn't get front fenders for that particular model of a Mercedes convertible. And I got carried away with the metal work and really tried to get things so they were perfect and welds didn't show and so forth. And it looked great in the metal. The metal work was ground a little too much, and it ended up cracking, and the owner was furious. Didn't want to have to paint it again, and I understand that. It was fine till it sat out in the hot sun. And what happened was, in the hot sun, the metal was so thin from grinding those welds down, things moved, and yes, I didn't put tiger hair on over that. And so when I redid it, I made sure that I didn't grind the welds down so much that the metal was thin. And the car's still fine to this day. Well, sometimes you can go too far. And particularly when you're doing patches and so forth, so much of the hobby has become about panel replacement and replacing everything where the factory did it and blah, blah, blah. And I get that that's what you want to do, or if that's what you know how to do, or if that's what you're comfortable doing. I'm not against that at all. You know that I like to do things as much as possible on the cheap when I'm not building high dollar cars. As we've said so many times, there's a context to everything, and contexts just aren't the text messages that you receive from your relatives in prison. Now here's my point, and this is what I want to drive home and get you thinking about. If you're so discouraged because you can't get this thing done to the level of perfection that you're shooting for, maybe you need to lower your standards a little bit and just settle for excellence, or settle for good. Now that's not really settling. What you are doing is you're putting joy back into what you should be enjoying, rather than stealing joy from yourself and taking all the fun out of the hobby because it's not perfect.
It's not perfect.
I would never say don't strive to improve. I would never say don't learn. I would never say don't continue to work on increasing your skill set. But one of the things that I've learned in writing books and in writing articles and in recording music, there's always another one coming down the pike.
There's always another one coming down the pike.
And you got to get this one done. Do the best you can on this one, learn what you can, and improve on the next one. None of it has to be perfect. It's a frickin' hobby. It's a frickin' car. Keep it all in perspective. That's important. So here's your homework. Here's what you can do. Drop it down there in the comments. Tell all of us about a time that you got so caught up in things not being perfect that you completely lost interest in the project, or got so discouraged about it you just wanted to get rid of it and forget about it and believe that you couldn't actually turn out a nice product. Because I think we've all been there, and I think our stories can encourage each other to say, hey, you know what? Sometimes things done imperfectly can still be a blessing.
Sometimes things done imperfectly can still be a blessing.
All right, that's going to do it for this one. We're over on the Face thing. We're over on Instant Grandma. She loves us and gives us cookies and all the stuff you've heard me say before. And of course, we're here on YouTube. So like, subscribe, share, all of that. The one thing you can do that would really help the channel grow is if you would share these videos with other people, with friends, share them on social media platforms or whatever you're on, that people might find this interesting. We want to continue to see the channel grow, because the more the channel grows, the more I am going to have resources to be able to do. All right, that'll do it for this one, and we will definitely catch you on the next one.
Rock!